Space Cowboy Books presents Simultaneous Times, a science and speculative fiction podcast. Short stories to stir the imagination by contemporary authors.
Containment by Addison Smith, with music by Patrick Earn, read by Jean-Paul Garnier. The hull of the Aegis 7 knocked a steady rhythm among the hiss of air and the violent 1-2 trill of alarm. It was a simple pattern, familiar enough that Juno sought it out among the chaos, distant though it was. Knock, knock, knock. Knock, knock, knock. She imagined Callie at her door asking permission to enter, back before they were officially paired, when their relationship was against code. Knock, knock, knock. Knock, knock, knock. Juno stared through the thick glass of the ship's window, her thoughts frantic and confused in the chaos. Her evac suit clung tight to her body, restricting a chest already tight with panic and need. Still, she stared unblinking until her eyes dried and begged. She watched as Callie depressed her handheld comm and spoke into its receiver. Her movements labored. "You're so beautiful." Her comm crackled in Juno's ear. Tears welled at the sound of her voice, and she turned away, refusing to see what lay outside. "Juno," Callie said, and her heart cracked and splintered. She turned back and placed her hand upon the glass. "I'm sorry," Callie said, and the truth was in her eyes. She meant it. Callie was impulsive, reckless, but with Juno, she was gentle. She knew the power of words, and the power lost when those words were used carelessly. When she spoke to Juno, she meant what she said, and now she was sorry. Grunts and screams interrupted their reunion, but she didn't break eye contact. She had too much to say. "It's fine," Juno said, rubbing at her stinging eyes. "I'm fine." "But I left," Callie said. "I left you." Juno slammed her fist against the glass and wished it would crack, shatter, decompress, and suck her into the vacuum with Callie, where they could be together and she could lose herself in those bright blue eyes. Callie watched, her own hand stretched to the glass. "Juno," she said. There was pain in her words and a request she knew she couldn't ask. "I need you to let me in." Juno shook her head and swore, turned her shoulder away. "I can't," she said. "Callie, I can't." But she wanted to. She wanted to hold her, give in to her, let her wash the chaos from her mind. But all she saw were those bright blue eyes. Her comm crackled again, a different voice interrupting their private moment. "Officer Wiley," a man's voice said. "The ship is compromised. We are losing pressure and need containment. What is your status?" He didn't know. The captain didn't know Callie was outside the ship, watching her, begging to be let in. He didn't know what happened. "It's okay," Callie said through the comm. Juno watched her to press the button again. The comm was handheld, not built into an evac suit like her own. It was meant for intership communications. She didn't even know it would work outside the hull. Maybe it didn't. Maybe she was crazy. Maybe none of it was real. "Honey," Callie said, "it's going to be okay. I don't blame you. I understand. I'm not mad. But you have to let me in. It's going to be okay." Tears welled again in Juno's eyes. The stinging sensation grew. more than just tears and rubbed skin. The airlock was near, only meters away across red-tinted steel. She trusted Callie. She wished she had never thrown her out the lock. She wished she hadn't seen that blue glow in her eyes, the sure sign of infection. She wished she hadn't seen her hunched over the body of her lieutenant attempting to open the airlock and decompress the ship. Most of all, she wished she had given her a suit. Callie floated outside, skin bare to the vacuum of space and the freezing cold. Blood coated her arms in black ice, and her eyes shone so blue they glowed with parasitic light. "Callie," Juno said, but her eyes stung and burned. She rubbed at them, and when she pulled her hand away, she saw the blue glow of infection upon her palm. She smiled, and all thought of safety and duty left her. They would call Callie Patient Zero. She began the infection that doomed them all. Blue spread through Juno's vision, and she found she didn't care. She imagined herself in Callie's arms, floating in nothingness forever. The airlock was only meters away. The steps came easy, and she entered the sequence of keystrokes. "I'll be there soon, Callie." She opened the airlock, and the void rushed in. Unauthorized Personnel on the Bridge by Moh Afdhaal, with music by Fog Machine, read by Jean-Paul Garnier. Aboud's outpost on the bridge straddled the nebulous border between sky and space, too far above the tubular structure's entrance to see anything but a carpet of green, blue, and white swirls speckled with pinpricks of iridescent city lights. Too far below the exit to pick out the inhabited pustulous domes arrayed on the plateaus littering the pockmarked gray Maria. The bridge was the pride and joy of Earth, a 384,000-kilometer titanium and Kevlar umbilical cord between the planet and its tidally locked moon, a man-made marvel. It was primarily used to shuttle industrialists and tourists between the Earth's stratosphere and the moon's mare nectaris, and the occasional stowaway fugitive seeking obscurity in the lunar plains. Aboud watched the azure meld into indigo through a porthole in his bunk, unable to differentiate between the airborne specks of spacecraft from the flickering stars that flitted with terpsichorean grace. His thoughts meandered into familiar territory, pondering life after retirement. A life where his bare feet could sink into the mottled brown soil of Earth, or his heavy-duty boots could imprint on the dusty regolith of the moon, or life where the sky was always safely above the horizon. He was unceremoniously disrupted by an abrupt alarm of flashing red light, accompanied by a cacophonous blare. Aboud hastily slugged his hot lilac tea, tongue burning as the alarm painted the room in alternating moments of eerie sanguineous monochrome. It signaled a breach. Unauthorized personnel on the bridge. The alarm had been raised as the transfer pod passed through Aboud's designated 88-kilometer sector, thereby halting its high-speed travel in a stomach-churning instantaneous deceleration and placing it under his authority. Belting his trank lasso to his waist, Aboud jogged through the corridors of the outer bridge, approaching the inner tube emergency bay where the tungsten carbide-shelled transfer pod would alight. A notification popped up on his HUD, informing him that the pod had been observed taking in more breathing vapor than calculated, hence the conclusion that there was a stowaway. Aboud accepted the notification calmly. He had seen many breaches during his 7-year tenure, several of which had escalated into a situation where he had to reluctantly lasso a squirming escapee. Although he despised the dehumanizing weapon, he accepted they were far more effective than projectile weaponry in a crowd packed densely in a capsule lined with highly sensitive electronics. The pod doors hissed open. Abood was met with the noise of anxious babble from the passengers, dropping into a sharp silence as they spotted him. It was a vertically aligned cylinder, dissected into 5-tiered levels, each carrying 5 passengers seated along its circumference on a narrow platform, and a separate landing at the bottom for the access doors. He stepped in, putting forth his tried and tested mask of intimidation, and looked up at the nervous faces that gawked down. "Sorry, folks," he grunted at the passengers, making sure his voice carried to the top, coating it with added harshness. "I have been informed of an unauthorized traveler in this pod. There will be a routine check. Please have your unique ID and lunar entry clearance ready for inspection." The gruff voice paired with his tall frame consistently elicited instant compliance, a feature he had put to successful use in his time on the bridge. Much easier to handle than the reaction a warming voice and kind face would get. Abood checked off each passenger against the manifest as he climbed the levels. This particular pod, an economy class G, carried an eclectic mix of timid first-time tourists interspersed with experienced blue-collar travelers. He rounded on a couple seated on the topmost rung, a thin-haired, middle-aged man sweating profusely in his standard-issue travel suit, an equally distressed woman with frizzy golden locks. They held out their palms towards Abood, the neon blue glint of their imprinted unique ID wavering as their hands trembled. "Is everything okay, ma'am?" The lady clutched a black duffel under her arm, one side of it meshed, the other pushed up against her chest. She nodded, beaming an uncomfortable smile at Abood. "What's in the bag, ma'am? It should be in the luggage hold." Abood slowly moved his hand towards the tranq lasso as a sense of foreboding spread through his bones. The contents of the duffel seemed to be the object of the couple's distress. He was not prepared to, or equipped to handle, explosive devices inside the pod. Whatever abrupt movement the lady made, he had to lasso her before she could trigger it. He cursed internally. It seemed appropriate that he would face an unprecedented danger only a couple months away from retirement. Before Abood could raise his voice again, a soft yelp echoed from the bag. For a second, he braced himself for the explosion, muscles tensing as he teetered on the edge of the platform. A second yelp eased him back down, relief flooding his veins. "Ma'am, is that a pet in your bag?" The woman stayed mum, but the man broke down. "We are sorry, officer," he said, between anxious gasps for air. "We couldn't leave Bowie on Earth. We just couldn't leave our baby." Abood sighed heavily. The woman sat still, tight-lipped, combative eyes gazing at him. The bag and the poor dog inside it squeezed between her arms. "Look, folks, you know pets are not permitted for space travel. We can't guarantee their safety. You've put this entire operation at risk with this blatant disregard of rules." The man cowered. The lady dropped her head slightly. Abood felt like a parent lecturing an unruly child. "Fortunately for you, I'm not able to confiscate your pet. I'm going to notify the lunar entrance port, though. Be prepared for questioning." He saw instant solace settle into the couple. They slouched back onto their seats, the woman almost letting a relieved smile escape, the man with his head in his hands. Abood picked out a peanut butter cookie he'd kept saved for moments of hunger out of a hidden pocket on his leg and tossed it at the man. "For the dog," he nodded. "Have a safe trip, folks." He threw in a grin for added reassurance before he left the pod and gave command the all clear to continue its journey. Sauntering into the communications hub to send out his message, Abood thought about the couple. He imagined a life where he would have so much love that he couldn't bear being separated from the object of his love. Would he get up to the same mischievous wanderlust that the couple did? Or would he be content living out life with his feet rooted firmly on solid ground? Either way, he would be free to decide in 2 months. Until then, Abood put his feet up on the communications console and listened to the rhythmic whir of capsules as they zoomed through the bridge, speculating on the reasons the technologist and the opportunists and the escapees packed inside would ever want to leave the tangible comfort of land beneath their feet, even for a 72-hour ride. In this episode of Simultaneous Times, you heard Containment by Addison Smith, with music by Patrick Earn, and Unauthorized Personnel on the Bridge by Moh Afdhaal, with music by Fog Machine. Theme music by Dane Luscombe. Come visit us at our bookstore in Joshua Tree or online at spacecowboybooks.com. Don't forget to subscribe and visit us on Instagram and Twitter. We'd love to know what you think of the show.